Hey everyone, how's it going? All right, we're jumping into Nehemiah 6. Nehemiah 6 is a very famous chapter. You'll recognize it soon. All right, so Nehemiah 6 starts with, now it was reported to Sanballat, Tobiah, and all the other bad guys that Nehemiah had rebuilt the wall and there was no breach in it. But Nehemiah has not put up the gates yet. And so they get together and like, we still have time to stop this from happening. Okay, and right there is, we can glean so much from that, right? We can have these protective walls against us, but if the gate's still wide open, the stuff can still get in, right? So we need to guard what we're letting in, what we're keeping out, really keep that into check. So they send a message to Nehemiah and they're like, hey, we should meet, why don't you come to the villages outside of your walled city? Why don't you come? And there's a joke because in English it sounds funny because it's the plain of oh no. And that's exactly what Nehemiah says. Oh no. Because he says they were plotting to harm me. So I send them a message, and this is the famous part, right? I am doing a great work. So why should I stop what I'm doing? And why should the work stop so I can come down and meet with you? No. So they send this message 4 times. They do not succeed. So they send a 5th message. And they send a messenger with an open letter. And we see this, right? We see this on the internet. I wrote an open letter so the whole world can see my thoughts. And so, I mean, you gotta think about it. It's not rolled up in a scroll. It doesn't have a stamp, a seal on it. It's an open letter. So anywhere this messenger is going with this open letter, people, what do you have in your hand? What is this? What does that say? They're trying, and it says, Nehemiah, the nations all know that you are conspiring to be the king, and that you and the Jews are going to revolt against the king, and that you've paid prophets to say that you are the king, and that really you're a traitor, right? And Nehemiah says, listen, you guys are just making stuff up now. Go away. This is all in your head. And he's like, they're just trying to discourage us. They know if they can get me out, that people will be discouraged and the work will stop. And it says, and then he prays, so Lord, strengthen my hands. And I always find that interesting because I would have been like, Lord, strike them with lightning. Or, like, help me not to be discouraged. Help me stay on point, that type of thing. But Nehemiah is like set like flint, his like mind, spirit. So he knows what God has told him to do. He knows that he has the protection of God and his king. He is not concerned about his identity. That is not a problem for him, right? He is very secure because he knows whose he is, and he knows who has his back. But what he does know is he needs to finish this wall. And he's like, I gotta finish my work. I need my strength. So God, keep me strong. Right? And the actual tools of that. And I think that's really important for us to know, in our jobs, in daily things. It's like, okay, God, I need to do this. Like, please help me. Like, give me the mind of Christ. God, you know all things. Make me like Daniel above all others in all wisdom and understanding and knowledge. Like, God, strengthen my hands so that I don't fail on my job. He cares, okay? Now, what's interesting is in verse 10, it says that Nehemiah goes to Shamaya, house. And when you read it in the Hebrew, it says that this man is like shut in, but it's kind of like he's like holed up, like he's afraid for his life. And so tradition is he's probably the son of a priest, and he seems to be prophetic, and probably a friend of Nehemiah's, or at least somebody Nehemiah trusted, because Nehemiah went to his house. And the man tells Nehemiah, he's like, listen, we need to go to the temple. We're going to shut ourselves in, because they're going to try to kill you, and they're probably going to try to do it at night. And Nehemiah's like, in verse 11, why should a man like me flee? And who is there like me who would go into the temple to save his own life? I will not go in. Now, there's a couple things going on here. One, Nehemiah is not being arrogant. Nehemiah is the governor. If the governor flees the country, if the ruling entity or flees your city, something is wrong, right? And so he's like, I'm not running for my life. That's going to discourage my people. I'm a good leader. Leadership 101 with Nehemiah, right? And then he's like, also, it will look like I'm guilty if I'm going into the temple. As we see instances of this, like in, I think it's in Kings and Chronicles, where maybe in 2 Samuel also, where somebody's murdered someone, right? Or they're about to be executed for a crime. So they run into the temple and they grab the horns of the altar. And so as long as they're there, nobody can kill them, because you can't kill anybody on the altar, because that's for God. The moment you leave there, you're fair game, right? It's claiming sanctuary. Anyway, so, but you've done something wrong. That's what's going on there, right? And so he's like, no. And the other thing is that Nehemiah is probably not ceremonially clean right now. He's been working for 52 days on the wall and wearing the same clothes, everything like that. And he's like, I can't even go into the temple right now, type of thing. He's like, no. And so by doing what he knows to be right, or refusing to do what he knows to be wrong, and to keep his character, then God reveals to him, this is not me. This is not a prophetic word, right? And so I think it's interesting that, God allows us to use our brains for one, but Nehemiah was such a man of character that he already knew what God's answer was going to be on that. God, it was more God confirmed it for him, right? All right, so then Nehemiah does a little bit as he did in chapter 5, where he kind of goes backwards, right? And he's like, God, you need to remember these guys who keep doing this, and he names some other prophets and prophecies. And then verse 15, the wall is finished, 52 days, and it said that it was such a miracle that even everybody around knew that only God could have done this. And so then they were like, okay, fine, we can't go against God. This is truly a thing of God on that. And then in verse 17 and on, Nehemiah gives us some backstory. So the guy he came and saw in the house, it comes out that he was being paid to try to trick Nehemiah. Okay, and then the nobles were in the pay of Tobiah and Sanballat, and that they were sending letters back and forth, and so they would come to Nehemiah and be like, Tobiah's really not that bad. Tobiah, he's a good guy. You just misunderstand him. And then they go back to Tobiah and be like, this is what Nehemiah said. Da, 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 da. Okay, these guys, we've already learned, are very self-centered. These are not good nobles. These are not all nobles. Nehemiah is an example of a good noble, right? But these are the same nobles that one chapter before we found out were charging usury and selling their people into slavery. We saw in chapter 3 that the nobles of Tekoa wouldn't even try to help on the wall, okay? Noble is a misnomer, is a misnomer here. But it says that they felt this connection to Tobiah because somebody's daughter was married to somebody's son, and they were all related, okay? And so that's, again, a good lesson for us. Like, who are we making covenants with? Okay, who are you binding yourself to? Who are you making covenants with that you're feeling that you're going to have to do devious things for, that you become less of a person of good character because of this? All right, yeah, that's about it. That's all I have for today. All right, have a good week, guys. Talk to you later. Bye.